So if you've been watching my channel for a few years, then you might remember that back in 2016 I uploaded a video called What Now? Books and Films to Inspire Political Activism, and I filmed and uploaded that on the same day that the UK voted to leave the European Union and in what has now been dubbed Brexit. Something we are still very much in the process of, and I was seeing a lot of like despair and basically giving up and on social media, and I wanted to create a positive video. It's not positive because it's a mess, but I wanted to create a video based in hope, based in action, that would hopefully push some people to use all of that like stressed, negative energy to actually fight for a better country and a better world. And as I'm currently filming this video now, the government, and I will say this video will be going up, probably hours later, so don't use this as your most up-to-date source of political information, but the government in the UK is about to be prorogued, which means that for weeks to come, the Parliament will be in suspension in order to introduce a new government under a new Prime Minister by the name of Boris Johnson in weeks' time, and it is unprecedented, although it is standard for a new Prime Minister in the UK to temporarily prorogue Parliament in order to, get the Queen's blessing and stuff. And don't get me started on the fact that we live in a democratic country that still has a monarchy. That's a whole other issue. But it has never been done for this long, and that in itself is very much proof that Boris Johnson has an agenda with this suspension of Parliament. And I live in a democracy, I vote in this country, I live in this country, I pay my taxes in this country, I believe in democracy, and to have Parliament shutting down and to have debate and discussion amongst MPs forbidden essentially in the lead up to a massive political decision, which is Brexit, is absolutely despicable and unacceptable. So I have decided that I need to film another one of my books and films to inspire political activism video, because like many of you, I'm sure I am exhausted, I am fed up, I am worried and I am scared, but this isn't just about me and it's not just about you, it's about so much more. So we can't just, sit in our sofas and let it eat us up whilst we don't talk to other people or get out there if we can, or like share information with others online, whatever you can do. So in that sentiment, which I'm sure extends far beyond the UK at the moment, I'm going to share with you some books that I think will help inspire political activism amongst you. And first up is one of my absolute favourite books in this category or subset of books, which is Freedom is a Constant Struggle: Ferguson, Palestine and the Foundations of a Movement by Angela Y. Davis. Angela Y. Davis is a long-term political activist who has fought among the civil rights movements, feminist movements. She's fought for class issues, gender issues, race issues. She is somebody who has dedicated her life to the betterment of the lives of others, essentially, and ending disparity amongst society and ending inequality, and she is incredibly inspiring in my opinion. And this is such a short book that I think is something everyone should read. It's 145 pages and it's basically a collection of essays by Angela Davis of various lengths on various different examples of political activism and solidarity during times of turmoil. So she looks at struggles all the way from the United States to places like Palestine, to individuals there fighting for their rights in different countries amongst different subsets of groups, and how they have fought for the betterment of their society and how they have learned from other political movements and worked with other political movements, which I think is something incredibly important in these times, is sort of learning from one another and helping one another. This book does not shy away from dark realities, but it is incredibly inspiring. It will make you angry, but it will give you hope, and it will give you perhaps just the push to do something, whatever that something is. And I adore this book. I would just also recommend checking out Angela Y. Davis's back catalogue in general. She's a fascinating woman who has been through a lot and done a lot. I then want to mention a book that is more specifically concerned with environmental issues, but I still think it has a more general place in learning to be a political activist, and I do think climate change and environmental issues are important. So this is not a drill, the Extinction Rebellion Handbook, which came out very recently, and this is a collection of essays and short non-fiction pieces by a variety of different contributors, from UK politicians to ex-Maldivian politicians to, you know, just on-the-ground activists, people that originally formed the Extinction Rebellion group, which is like climate change environmentalist activist group that is actually worldwide, although I think they've had some of their like biggest press in the UK and Europe, but you know, if you live somewhere else, do check them out. There's the likelihood that they do have groups set up where you are as well, and I would recommend getting involved. What I particularly like about this book, and I think makes it particularly accessible, is that it's divided into two sections. So the first section are essays all about what is going on with the world, what climate change is doing to the world around us, what has caused climate change, you know, what is the future of our planet if we allow the climate change to continue at the rapid pace that it is. And then the second section of this book is all about practical ways that you can get involved with activism surrounding climate change, ways you can get involved with Extinction Rebellion, all the way from, you know, joining your first protest to going to your first meeting, etc, etc. It covers such a wide variety of things from a variety of different voices, and one of the things I think is particularly important and something that I admire in the Extinction Rebellion movement is how inclusive they are. This is not a movement about shaming people who use plastic straws. This is a movement about targeting the real enemy when it comes to climate change, and the real enemy when it comes to most of the problems in society, which are, you know, those with the wealth, big companies, governments, you know, just those that control the wealth in our society, those that are constantly obsessed by profit and furthering their own banks and what's in them, and the negative effect, the tumble down effect that has on, you know, the 99% of the population that don't come under that category. And I think the focus of the Extinction Rebellion on that is something that I think is very, very important when discussing political activism. It's not about, you know, like I said, you know, shaming individuals for making mistakes. It's about forcing those in power and in control to change, or, you know, get rid of them equally. Also good. I then want to mention a book that I think a lot of you will have read, and if you haven't, it is such an accessible read and such a important, inspiring read that I would recommend you do, and that is I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai. Now, Malala is a young woman now, but when she was first, you know, sort of like making her mark in the world, she was literally a child, and that is the events that this book covers when she lived under Taliban-ruled Pakistan with her father and the rest of her family, and the Taliban were trying to take away women's access and girls' access to education, you know, prevent them from freely moving through their cities and their countries, from, you know, learning to read, and, you know, because let's be honest, at the end of the day, the best way to stop people from fighting against you is to deny them education. So of course the best way to subordinate women in any society is just, you know, don't let them have access to education. But Malala and her dad said no. Her dad was a teacher and she was someone that felt passionate about her education, and she did not back down, and she actually was attacked and shot by the Taliban for her political activism. She survived, like I mentioned. She is an adult now, and she has moved outside of her home. She had to leave for her own safety, but she's continued to campaign for girls, women and everybody's right to education and freedom in the world. And she's somebody who is just so incredible. Like, what a wonderful, wonderful young person who will go on to become a wonderful, wonderful older person, and who has, you know, dedicated her life to such good. And I think we can all take a leaf out of Malala's book. Even if we don't live under the Taliban, I think there's probably something we can do in our own backyards to make the world a little bit better. And lastly, I want to mention for books, before I get into films, How to Survive a Plague, the story of how activists and scientists tamed AIDS by David France. Now, the subtitle already gives you a clue about the effectiveness of the campaign discussed in this book. So when the rise of HIV and AIDS became a major issue in the 1980s, it was incredibly difficult to access the medicine necessary to fight this disease if you lived in the United States in particular, or at least this book, that's what this book is dealing with. And this book follows The activists that essentially demanded access to these drugs, you know, that demanded the government and the pharmaceutical companies allow them the life-saving drugs that they needed, and equally campaigned against the homophobic attitudes that also were wrapped up in the reason why people weren't being allowed access to these drugs, and were then equally treating people who suffered from HIV and AIDS. It's a chunky book because it does explore in depth equally the science of HIV and AIDS, which is something that I think we're all, you know, aware of the terms, but do we all understand them? Probably not. So it's really great to have the science in here, the development of how, you know, scientists have created these drugs that mean people can live incredible long lives even with HIV. And the people in this book, the people that did the campaigning, are so inspiring. I actually got to interview one of them back when I worked at Pan Macmillan, Peter Staley, who continues to be a HIV and AIDS awareness and gay rights activist to this day. He has dedicated his whole life to this issue, and they have made a difference. Today is so much easier for people in the US and elsewhere to access medicine that is needed if you are suffering from HIV, and to stop it from progressing to AIDS. But it's also not a struggle that is completely over. So this is, you know, a book that is still very important but also incredibly inspiring because, like I said, you know, the access was granted, so successful campaigning. But for my first film I want to mention, there is actually an accompanying documentary to this book, which is also called How to Survive a Plague, and has tons of incredible original footage from the 80s, from meetings and protests organised by these campaigners, interviews with them then and more recently when the documentary was being created, and the impact that they had and following that journey. It is an amazing documentary. I've seen it twice, and I honestly feel like I could do with rewatching it because it is, you know, hard-hitting but inspiring and just a must watch. Equally, for documentaries in this video, I want to mention one that came out a year or two ago now, and that is Nae Pasaran. Now, Nae Pasaran is a documentary about a group of factory workers in Glasgow who actively demonstrated solidarity with those living in Chile when the Chilean government, the democratically elected Chilean government, under President Salvador Allende, was the recipient, I guess, of a coup, a military coup, which resulted in the death of Allende and the overturning of any kind of left-wing policies in the country. And there was so much violence during this time, a lot of deaths, a lot of people fleeing Chile. And what the factory workers in Glasgow did was that they ceased working on airplane parts that were being used by the military. So back then, most of these airplane parts were being made in Scotland by these ordinary guys just working in a factory, but these were trade unionists, these were men who understood the meaning of solidarity, that understood the struggle of the working classes, and they saw what was happening in Chile, and they were like, we are essentially going on strike on behalf of Chile. We are not going to build these parts or repair these parts and contribute to the violence that's going on in this country against the ordinary people there. And what's wonderful about Nae Pasaran is that these men did what they felt was right, but in no way really felt like they made an impact in the long term. They are now older men. This happened quite a few decades ago. And one of the things that the documentary showed was, by talking to Chileans who had also been alive during this time, is that they had known about what was going on in Glasgow, in Scotland. They had known what these men were doing, and it had given them hope. It had given them, you know, the kind of like bolster they needed in their political activism, and they felt that solidarity, even if they didn't have like the easiness of communicating like we do today to talk to one another. And it's a beautiful documentary. A beautiful, beautiful act of solidarity, and I just love it. But yeah, those are a few books and films that I think kind of encompass my attitude towards political activism, my attitude towards working together to make the world a better place. And I think that we do need to all get involved. So rather than feeling crap, or as well as feeling crap, because, you know, it's not that easy to just completely turn around the way the world is currently making you feel, why not also sort of use that energy towards something, you know, start up a conversation, sign a petition, share some information online, go to a meeting, join a party, go to a protest, join a trade union, go on strike, have your voice heard, do something amazing, whether it be small or big, and together, you know, we can say no. Because what is going on in my country right now is unacceptable, and what is going on in many other countries right now is unacceptable. So that's my say for the day. I'm going to go now edit this video and hopefully I can turn it around and still get it uploaded today as well, whilst it's particularly relevant, although I'm sure it always will be. And I will link the previous video like this that I did in the description box down below. Would love to hear from you if you have more recommendations of books, films, organisations, anything that you think we should all know about and can make a little bit of a difference. And until next time, happy reading, happy protesting, and I will see you all again soon. Bye guys!